I thought that maybe you should be acting, and so I did a couple of soaps, and you're too thin, too fat, too this, too this. You're Latin? No, you're not Latin. You're white? No, you're not white. Are you brown? Well, you're not brown enough. Well, you have an accent. Well, you don't have an accent. Well, and I said, who makes the decisions? The producers. That's what I'm going to go do. I used to say, if I'm going to be someone, who do I want to be? I want to be Kathy Kennedy. We can do better. I know we can. I know we can.
It's funny that people call it the X-Men. There's a lot of female superheroes in that X-Men group, so I think it's outdated.
And then completely tear them apart. So that was a fun part, to tear something apart.
America Chavez! He is cheeky and as cheeky Chavez as you can have it. You can watch it in 2D, in 3D,
so many options.
In 3D IMAX,
4D,
whatever D you want.
I'm sure somewhere else.
I am not a comic book fan. If I have a choice between a political thriller or a love story and a comic book movie, I probably won't pay that money. I probably will get fired after this. You are streaming live, right? Yeah.
Well, Nerdrotic.com.
As you may or may not know, Marvel President Victoria Alonso is no more at Disney.
Amazing.
And let's be real, Marvel has had a really bad week, and Disney has had a worse 6 months. Since last November, Disney has lost millions of subscribers on D+, has lost billions on the fledgling streaming service, fired a CEO in the middle of the night on a Sunday, and fired a Marvel president. And now their big star, who the next two Marvel phases completely rely on, Jonathan Majors, has been arrested and arraigned in New York, still innocent until proven guilty.
Booyah.
Doesn't make it any less of a black eye for Disney. And currently, the corporate media, the corporate access media shills, and Marvel stans are performing mental gymnastics trying to justify why one of their champions was fired. But accepting the truth will be a very bitter pill to swallow for them, because it would be admitting that we, and yes, that includes you, my dear friends in the audience, were right. I'd like the over 715,000 of you and the 40% who haven't subscribed yet to join me on a little journey, and let's enjoy a little Disney Schadenfreude. To briefly recap, it was initially announced that Victoria Alonso left Disney Marvel. Then we found out Victoria Alonso was fired from Disney Marvel. Then we found out why Victoria Alonso was fired from Disney Marvel. According to Disney's official version of events, she breached her contract by promoting and producing another film for another company. Now, Victoria Alonso is weighing legal action against Disney Marvel. I love that they called it Disney Marvel over sudden firing. Serious consequences, promises lawyer Patty Glazer, as Mouse House points indisputable breach of contract. Now, if you believe for 1 second this is the only reason this woman was fired, I have some land in Wakanda to sell you. The Walt Disney Company is facing serious consequences, as they just said in the headline, and possible legal action over the pink slipping this week of Marvel VFX chief Victoria Alonso, making it clear to Bob Iger, Kevin Feige, and everyone at the House of Mouse that she is not going quietly. And you want to know why? Because you hired an activist and then promoted her to president.
Fight. As long as I am on Marvel Studios, I will fight for representation.
The Oscar-nominated producer has retained the services of one Patty Glazer. To that end, with competing points of view on what's going on behind the scenes, the law firm partnership is putting Disney on notice. By the way, Patty Glazer is the very same lawyer representing Karen McCarthy, the producer suing Lucasfilm over The Acolyte. Now, I have never said that Victoria Alonso is solely responsible for the identity politics-driven MCU, but she is a force behind it. No, that responsibility still lays at the feet of Kevin Feige. Neither of them, by the way, are creative executives, but they do hire all the creatives. I maintain that Victoria Alonso is simply a fall guy for Kevin Feige, the very same Kevin Feige who managed to usurp the throne of the guy who sold Marvel to Disney and was running it until Kevin took over, Ike Perlmutter. But somehow, Kevin couldn't find the time to save his girl. And this statement comes from her attorney. The idea that Victoria was fired over a handful of press interviews relating to a personal passion project about human rights and democracy that was nominated for an Oscar, not sure what that has to do with anything, and which she got Disney's blessing to work on, is absolutely ridiculous. And I would agree with that if it were true, and I think it is part of the truth. But here come the identity politics. Victoria, a gay Latina who had the courage to criticize Disney, and there's the other reason she got fired, was silenced, and that's the reason you don't hire activists. Then she was terminated when she refused to do something she believed was reprehensible. Disney and Marvel made a really poor decision that will have serious consequences. There is a lot more to the story, and I'm looking forward to hearing it, and Victoria will be telling it shortly in one form or another. Disney isn't taking that shot across the bow without a missive of their own. It's unfortunate that Victoria is sharing a narrative that leaves out several key factors concerning her departure. I'd love to hear them, including an indisputable breach of contract and a direct violation of company policy. A Disney spokesperson told Deadline this evening, "We will continue to wish her the best for the future and thank her for her numerous contributions to the studio. Now don't let the door hit you in the ass on the way out." This is my favorite part. Alonso still has her Possibility as your superpower memoir coming out later this year on a Disney imprint. I'm looking forward to that epilogue. Now, dear viewer, I'd like you to consider the possibility that Victoria Alonso was fired for more than one thing. Yes, she breached her contract. She was the coordinator of all the video effects departments and oversaw 17 projects that were all varying degrees of crap. The very press-friendly Alonso, who was constantly an outspoken champion of diversity at Disney to the point where she called out the then Disney CEO Bob Chapek to take a stand against Florida's parental rights bill. I don't care if Bob Iger and Victoria Alonso were best friends. They went to each other's house for Christmas and barbecues. Their kids were on the same soccer team. They both had the same favorite baseball team. If you call out a previous CEO, even if it's one Bob Iger hated, she still had to go. Eventually, she was going to be a problem, and eventually came. In what is certain to become ever sharper elbows if this goes to court, Deadline has been told that despite her affable demeanor to the press, Alonso was sometimes challenging to work with at the House of Mouse. Breach of contract, being called a bully by sources from video effects departments, overseeing the complete disaster that is the MCU, being a giant and annoying woke activist, calling out her CEO, and being difficult to work with. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's all of the above. Now, early in January, I released a video called Disney is Doomed. Just last week, I released a video called Disney is a Disaster, Marvel is Dying, and Star Wars is Dead. My mind hasn't changed. As a matter of fact, the hits just keep coming, and it gets worse because the access media that has been protecting Disney for years is turning on their masters from Variety. Marvel's big mess, Victoria Alonso's contentious exit, presents a rare public drama for the studio. From the box office disappointment of Quantumania to assault allegations against Jonathan Majors, Marvel Studios is facing one crisis after another. And from the Daily Mail, on top of the $5 billion they need to cut, $3 billion coming from content, Disney will begin to fire 7,000 of its global staff this week, CEO Bob Iger announces after share prices plunged 31% in a year following a series of woke controversies. CEO Bob Iger made the announcement on Monday in a letter to employees. Iger, recently reinstated as CEO, is working to save the company $5.5 billion. Several major departments are impacted, with more to come at ESPN. Good, eventually. And it doesn't stop there. This dropped while I was recording this video. Breaking news: Marvel Entertainment Chairman Ike Perlmutter out at Disney. Perlmutter's Marvel Entertainment division, not associated with Kevin Feige's Marvel Studios, will be folded into other parts of Disney. Again, Ike Perlmutter is the guy who used to keep Kevin Feige in check until Feige became frustrated with him and pulled Marvel Studios away from him, and now he's gone and the red wedding continues. But guess who's still there? The guy who has presided over all of the crap over the last few years, Kevin Feige.
Nothing to see here, please.
The lovely Mrs. Nerdrotic pointed out just this morning that I might be enjoying this Disney dumpster fire a little bit too much. Yes, And we'll get into that in just a little bit. But first, I'd like to go to an article that might have flown under the radar, but again, it's from Variety. And yes, they are starting to ask some real questions about what's going wrong at Disney Marvel. Of course, they missed the point, but that's what I'm here for. Ant-Man 3 crashed at the box office after trilogy best opening. What went wrong? Well, besides the fact it was released, the bigger they are, the harder they fall, saying ain't so, Variety. That's the presiding feeling about the box office performance of Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. That is the worst title ever. Disney's superhero threequel opened to $106 million domestically in February, eviscerating trilogy records among the Ant-Man standalone stories. And that's the same narrative they ran with Thor: Love and Thunder, which ended up doing worse than the previous film. But ticket sales for Paul Rudd's latest adventure have cratered in subsequent weeks. At this rate, Ant-Man 3 may become one of the rare Marvel movies to either fall short of or barely surpass the $500 million mark at the global box office, except for the 3 films that came out in 2021, which of course we're not counting, but we really should. Let's see, Black Widow earned $379 million globally, which can be forgiven because it was released early in 2021, and it was also on D+. It also was an awful film, but what can't be forgiven is Shang-Chi, which was released September 3rd and only grossed $432 million. I know, it was an absolute triumph. And then on November 5th, Eternals was released and it only earned $402 million. A month and 2 weeks later, Spider-Man: No Way Home was released and blew away the entire COVID narrative. With a production budget of $200 million, at least that's what they initially reported. We now know that all of the Marvel Phase 4 films and Phase 5 films have been massively reshot, and they aren't reporting how much that cost. And a marketing spend of at least $100 million, Ant-Man 3 is expected to fall short of the roughly $600 million needed to break even in its theatrical run. Recent Marvel movies, including Black Widow and the Eternals, were granted amnesty for losing money on the big screen because they were either released simultaneously on D+ or were put in theaters at a time when people were more reluctant to go to the movies due to the COVID concerns, except for Spider-Man: No Way Home. The dismally reviewed Quantumania can't use the same excuses for losing tens of millions of dollars in its theatrical run. Variety has turned on their masters. The one bright spot is that it could recoup some costs through home entertainment and the other ancillary markets. No, I don't think so. Disney has declined to comment. To be fair, what are they going to say? We're f***ed. I mean, it would be funny, refreshing, and honest, but that ain't Disney. There's no question audiences were not satisfied with Ant-Man 3, says David A. Gross, while he earned his paycheck with that statement. Way to go, Dick Tracy, who runs the movie consulting firm Franchise Entertainment Research. Superhero fans are highly in tune with these stories. Comic book fans are. Have you seen the average Marvel stan on Twitter, though? And that helps when the films connect, which is almost all of the time. But in this case, it hurts. Oh no, it hurts. You almost hate to hear that. No. Box office numbers are backed up by that keen, insightful, and obvious assessment. Marvel may remain critic-proof in terms of opening weekends because all the critics are approved by Marvel, but its movies are no longer immune to quickly falling back down to earth when the rest of the world sees this garbage. So the third film might not catch up to the total of the first, and let's not forget that the second installment, Ant-Man and the Wasp, came in between two of the most anticipated sequels of all time and benefited from it like another movie, Captain Marvel.
Is that like a personal attack or something? Or...
The billion-dollar film that was so popular, they delayed the sequel, what is it now, 4 times, and demoted the main character. For Marvel, there is always such a high bar that anything less than a Grand Slam box office home run is seen as underwhelming. Expectations that were set by Disney Marvel. With Ant-Man 3, the highest grossing movie released this year thus far, it may be that the fans are looking for a bit more of the magic that was part of the Marvel brand for so many years through so many great films. Quite frankly, the last one that wasn't made by Sony was Infinity War, and that was 5 years ago. But Variety doesn't want to totally pick on Marvel, so they bring up that Shazam! Fury of the Gods has been a complete flop, and yes, it's going to be a very tough year for superhero films, and that will be tough on Marvel in the future and DC, and the only one that might be good this year is Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. Still, box office analysts aren't crying superhero fatigue just yet. Of course, because they're paid to tell Hollywood exactly what they want to hear, just like the rest of the market analysts. Hell, there are 1,000 videos on YouTube for free that will tell you the truth. And Marvel's Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 and Sony's Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse look to dominate at the summer box office. Well, I'm not so sure about the Spider-Verse. I like the first movie, although Miles Morales is Miles Morales, but I'm not too sure about Prager's Spider-Woman. However, the results signal a near future in which the studios could no longer release just any mega-budgeted comic book adaptation in theaters with the expectation it'll turn into a box office smash. In COVID times, Sony and Marvel Studios' Spider-Man No Way Home is the only superhero movie to cross the coveted $1 billion mark. Quality, a factor that detractors, hello, have complained is missing from Ant-Man 3 and Wakanda Forever, Thor Love and Thunder, Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, The Eternals, Shang-Chi and the Legend of the 10 Bracelets, and Black Widow, and a dozen pieces of garbage on D+. Again, quality is more important than ever, according to Variety. Audiences are making it known that the Marvel standard itself is set very high, says Sean Robbins, another chief analyst at Box Office Pro. Goodwill is not permanent. Really, you don't say. Without occasional reinforcement of why it's there in the first place? Occasional reinforcement? Marvel's track record has truly been remarkable, and I'm willing to give them the benefit of the doubt, Gross says. Well, we're not, and you're paid to. Marvel rarely misses, but it happens regularly with all kinds of movies. Hollywood, just between us. You pay people to say this shit? It may be too early to draw conclusions. No, it's way too late. But there's concern because the latest Ant-Man had the lofty responsibility of kicking off Phase 5 of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, as well as introducing the arrested and arraigned in New York Jonathan Majors, innocent until proven guilty, villainous Kang the Conqueror, as the heir apparent to Thanos. Any decline in interest is problematic because Marvel movies have thrived due to their interconnected nature. That's actually dead wrong. The Marvel Cinematic Universe used to thrive based on their characters adapted properly from the source material that Kevin Feige has decided to ignore. Robert Downey Jr. as Iron Man, Chris Evans as Captain America, Chris Hemsworth as Thor, Scarlett Johansson as Black Widow, all looked like they did in the comics. And right now, not unlike Lucasfilm, you're living off the fumes of goodwill. Goodwill created by the comic book artists, the comic book writers, and the filmmakers from the early MCU who were your betters.
My character's relationship with the reader is my own relationship. I love people in general, and that's reflected in my characters. My characters are very human, and the next guy recognizes himself. And any character I draw, no matter how fantastic that character is, the next guy will always relate to him.
The responsibility is shifting to newer heroes to pick up the slack. No, that again is dead wrong. You need Iron Man, Captain America, Thor, Hulk, and you need to recast them. It's risky, but it's certainly less risky than just passing on the mantle to serve identity politics over story. For example, upcoming installments like The Marvels, a sequel to a billion-dollar film that was so successful they demoted the main character and delayed this film 4 times. And Blade, a film that has been massively delayed and might not ever be made, and wow, that rhymed, center on lesser-known characters compared to Thor, Captain America, and Doctor Strange. But in order to keep building in the post-Endgame era, the movies can't merely rely on excitement for just what has come before. They will need to be of sufficient quality to keep bringing in ticket buyers beyond opening weekend, introducing them and getting them invested emotionally in the fates of other vigilantes, like Ironheart, Echo, and Agatha Harkness.
Why?
Why? And just like with Lucasfilm, because Star Wars is Han, Luke, and Leia, and they're all dead now, Marvel Studios is screwed because they never should have killed Iron Man and Captain America. It was stupid, and they're still paying for it. And somehow they think they could pass the mantle their way out of it, which they can't. So go ahead, bring on that Marvels movie. Give me a She-Hulk season 2. Let's get that A-Force movie. Hell, let's have a pregnant Spider-Woman trilogy. I'm all about acceleration at this point. Now, I would like Disney Marvel to take a couple of days off with the bad news so I can go touch some grass, but if they don't, I'll be here because I can do this all day. If you like what you heard, please like, share, and subscribe. If you didn't like what you heard, thanks for listening this long. I'll see you in the next video.
Nerdrotic.com. Please subscribe.